welcome back to the next part of my dialing in series for our Line 6 Helix. Today I wanted to do something that I've kind of done in the past, but to update it actually. With the 2.9 firmware update, I wanted to go back and revisit my template file that so many folks have contacted me about and say they use so regularly to make a couple small tweaks to it that are now possible in the 2.9 software update. And we'll discuss what those are in a second. And then I'm going to upload this template to CustomTone. I'll label it something along the lines of 2.9 template update or something along those lines. But we'll go through today the tiny little changes, the small changes, well, maybe not so small changes that we're going to make. And I'm going to have actually two templates. So stick with me and we'll see. Let's go over to HXEdit and take a look. So anybody who's followed my channel knows that this is my standard template, and anybody who's watched the dialing in videos, I start almost all my presets with this and then turn things on and off or remove things as I need them. But oftentimes, I would say 95% of the time, it stays exactly as this. And what that is the LA Studio comp at the end with a peak reduction around 5.5, gain of 5, set to compress, emphasis of 0.9, mix of 100%. Keep in mind this is a template, it's a starting point, okay? One thing now I wanted to mention, now that we have gain reduction meters in the Helix, make sure that when you put this on, you're getting the appropriate amount of compression that you are, for your tastes or what you're after. This is a starting point. It's really going to depend on how hot the signal is coming into the compressor that's going to determine how much compression. So if you had a really boosted signal coming into it, you're going to get maybe a lot more compression than you want. Or maybe if you got a really soft signal coming into it, you're not getting any compression at all. So what we would want to do is make sure we look at our gain reduction meters and change our peak reduction appropriately, right? If we need a little more, we can go higher. But I find for the most part in my workflow, 5.5 gives me what I need. Just a subtle little bit of glue compression at the end, which I've talked about a million times. So that's that. The parametric EQ, which I start off with the low cut of 100 Hertz and a high cut of 12 kilohertz. Now that changes sometimes. Again, this is a starting point, right? Maybe sometimes something's a little bit too fizzy on top and I want something smoother. So I will, maybe roll back the high cuts, right? But I always start here because I don't like to start off cutting too much out in case it's something that I need later. And the 100 Hertz on the low cut it seems to be a good sort of area to keep it at. One thing I'm going to add to the template, and this is something you can turn off if you don't like it, but I'm going to go in and around 450-ish odd Hertz with a Q of about 1.4, and I'm just going to pull that back by about 1.5 dB, and I'm going to kind of bake that into the template. That's oftentimes something I go do after the fact anyway, sometimes not, but I'm going to put it in there because I find that just kind of clears up some of the muddiness in some presets and just gives a little bit more clarity and makes it just sound overall better. So I'm going to keep that in there. My reverb, I'm going to keep about the same here. Again, just to give a little bit of room ambience, right? A decay of 5, pre-delay of 15 milliseconds, mix of 30%, and you can adjust that to your needs and wants, right? I also have a transistor tape delay. Again, some people might like different flavors of delay, and that's fine. This is just my starting point. It's my favorite delay. And I always set it to a quarter note, but again, that could change depending on tempo and what I need for a particular situation. Feedback at 22%. The wow and flutter might change too. I have it set at 2.1. Mix of 26%, and that usually works. Now here's where one of the major changes is going to happen though, is in the low and high shelf. And as I mentioned before in a previous video, I always in the past, I don't know if a lot of you remember, but maybe somebody who's new to my channel don't remember, the reason that the low and high shelf became a block in the Helix is because I started using a workaround. Since we didn't have shelf EQs in the Helix, I used this workaround. I would put a gain block followed by another gain block, and then I would yank the first gain block down, make sure that that goes before, and I would set my split block here to split crossover, and I would usually set the frequencies around 650 Hertz. Now what this allowed me to do is it would send all of the frequencies above 650 Hertz to the top gain block and all the frequencies below 650 Hertz to the bottom gain block. So that would allow me to say maybe boost 2 dB of all the frequencies above 650 Hertz and cut all the frequencies below 650 Hertz by a couple dB. And that was a setting I liked that just kind of made everything sound a little bit better. Well, the folks in line 6 noticed this and realized we don't have a shelf EQ, so they put one in. Thank you guys so much. I'm eternally grateful for that. So we can now just get rid of this up here. I don't need the split crossover technique anymore. But the problem was when they first implemented it, the high frequency had a limitation that it would only go as low as 2 kilohertz, while the low shelf would also go to 2 kilohertz. So it was a funny thing that I couldn't access the same settings I really liked, which was both being set at 650 hertz. So I put a little email through to them, and they were so kind in this update to update that for me. And now we can take this high frequency all the way down to 400, which is wonderful. I'm going to set that at 650. I'm going to set the low frequency at 650, cut all frequencies below by 2 dB and all frequencies above by 2 dB. And I just kind of like the way that sounds. So that's going to be baked into, I don't know why this says snapshot too, but this is going to be baked into the new template. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just grab an amp and a cab. Let's say let's go with the new RevGen Purple. What the heck? I'm not going to touch any other settings on here other than turn all of this off, okay? And here's what it would sound like now with just the RevGen Purple with its stock settings, the 412 Cali V30, 160 ribbon mic, 3 inches back. Now the cabs do come set at 80 hertz low cut and high cut of 8 kilohertz. One thing I do, because I've duplicated those in the parametric EQ, I get rid of those. So other than that, this is just how it pops up, okay? A little bit quiet. So let me just do this. Boost up the channel volume, which doesn't change the tone at all, just gets me a little more volume. Okay, nothing wrong with that. My first impression is maybe a little heavy in the low mids, maybe a little too much bottom versus cut, but I mean, it's totally usable. So let's do this. I'm going to turn my compressor on at the end. Then I'm going to look down at my Helix to see if I'm getting any gain reduction. And it's showing me just a little tiny hair, which is fine, but I may say, oh, let's go with a little tiny bit more. I'll just go there. That's giving me between 1 and 2 dB of gain reduction. So I actually may even just settle that back at 5.5, but okay, when we bring my EQ in, remember I have my low and high cuts, and I have this tiny little adjustment in the low mids, okay? So before, after. You'll notice that the volume is slightly less there now. So I'm going to come in and just boost the output level by 1 dB here. So off. Okay, I'm going to put my reverb in. Again, not overt reverb, it's just to give it some space like it was recorded in a real room. The delay. Again, very subtle. Okay, now the real magic for me is where I come and put this high and low shelf EQ in, which again, it's subtle, but I think it really makes a difference. So here's before. Off. Listen to the low mids. On. So again, if we turn both the EQs off, both of those on, it just polishes that sound up with that little bit of glue compression at the end, and everything works really nicely there. So that's going to be, obviously without the amp block, you need to add an amp block to this. When you get this, it's not going to have the amp block in it. So you need to add your amp block of choice. But I find just that chain there, obviously with the delay on or off, whether you want that or not, just kind of makes everything a little bit better. You know, and again, better as far as I'm concerned. Some other folks might not like it. That's fine. You know, I never, ever, ever want to make it sound like I am, you know, spouting out something that says everybody must do this. This is the only way to do it, you know. But I think that these things, for vast majority of situations, just kind of make everything a little bit more mix ready, whether it be for live or studio. All right. So I'm going to do that template. But what I'm going to do is I'm also going to copy this, and I'm going to go down to the next blank preset. I'm going to paste it, and there's going to be a good reason for that in a second. Now, before I do anything else, what I want to do, we'll get that pasted in there. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to remove the amp just so we're ready to go with our preset. I'll turn the delay off to start just because I know a lot of people won't want the delay on right off the bat. But we'll call this one Template Shelf LA. I don't know how many more letters I can get there. Okay, I'll just go LA. And you might say, well, why are we calling that Template Shelf LA? And then I will go back to the previous one and I'm going to keep the amp on it, okay? And I'm going to say, call this Template Shelf Rochester. I don't know how many letters I'm going to get in there. What's a good short form? RCH? Well, let's go with that. We'll call it that, okay? The reason is I'm going to keep all the settings the same, except I'm going to go to my LA Studio Comp and change it out to the new Rochester compressor. So we have two templates now, an LA Studio Comp and a Rochester compressor, which is the Ashley CLX52, I believe, are the proper numbers and letters to for the model number. Billy Sheehan's compressor. Anyways, I just did a video recently on dialing that in, and a lot of folks contacted me and really loved it, more so than the LA Studio Comp. I'm up in the air. I like them both, and I love options. I just love to have the ability to use different flavors. So I also want to have a template using the Rochester compressor at the end. So I'm going to come in here and just flip that one out. Okay, and I'm going to keep my same little amp here just to test things out. I'm not going to touch anything else. We'll leave all of that stuff alone. And I'm going to come in and check these settings out here. I'm going to just put the input gain back to 0. I did that the other day. It's not going to be really much of any difference. The ratio that I would probably want, now one thing I didn't mention, as I didn't use those settings in the last video, as of 2.9 software, there is a bug in the Rochester compressor that it doesn't compress, I believe, at any ratio below 3:1. But that's okay, because I'm going to use 4:1. So it's going to be okay, and that's going to obviously be fixed in a future update. So it's not a huge concern, but just be aware of that. I'm going to set my attack at 10 milliseconds, my release at 100 milliseconds. I don't want that much makeup gain, so I'm going to pull that back. I'm going to keep the knee at 0 dB, as this is already somewhat of a soft knee compressor. I talked about all that before, but what I need to be able to do is set the threshold properly. And this is something to keep in mind. Again, for you to set this to your particular patch or preset with the amp you're using and the volume level that you're feeding into the compressor, you're going to have to set the threshold. For my liking, it's about 1 to 3 dB of gain reduction, maybe ideally maybe 2, okay? So you'll have to set that. So let's see what we have here at those settings. I'm going to watch my gain reduction meter on the Helix. Right now I'm getting about 7 dB of gain reduction. Way too much, and you can hear it. It's really squashed. I do not want that. That's not at all what I want. Sorry, I don't want to touch the gain. I need to come to my threshold here. And what I need to do, I think when I tried it before, I was up around minus 13.8, but that's going to be different for this preset. probably give me about 3.5 or so. Let's just do this. I'm just gonna get it so it's just touching it. Now I'm going to bring up some makeup gain on that by, let's go 2.5. It's a little more noticeable compression, I find, in the LA Studio Comp. It's not quite as transparent, but it does give a real nice something in there, some nice squish to it, right? It might not be right for everything, and that's why I wanted to do 2 templates. So we still have the LA Studio Comp. It's gonna work fine. In fact, that's what I'll probably use most of the time, but I like this flavor too for something, maybe a situation that I need it for. Now, just keep in mind though, that you will have to adjust your threshold. It's very easy now, because now I can tell you simply look at your Helix gain reduction meters and try to get it so it's just moving, maybe 2 dB, like I said, of gain reduction. And I did a whole video about gain reduction meters and how those all work and with the compression and whatnot. So go watch that if you have any questions about that. But those are the settings I would probably keep it at. And I could then, get rid of this and save that as our, and I'll turn the delay off as well. And we'll save that. And that will be our Rochester compressor template with the shelf EQ. And actually, you know what? I could probably do this. Because I'm not using the tilt anymore, I could probably just name these even better. Template Rochester. Okay, well, it doesn't get all in there, but that's fine. And then template LA Studio. Beautiful. All right. Yeah, so a word about that. I used to have a tilt template. I found that, since it's been released, when we didn't have the ability on the shelf EQ to go down to 650 hertz on the highs, sometimes I would use the tilt just because it could get that center point at 650 hertz. I just don't like the fact that if I, which works fine sometimes, but sometimes if I just want to boost the highs and not touch the lows or have better control over the lows, it forces me to tilt them all kind of the same amount, right? So I kind of have been shying away from it, so I'm not going to put up a template for that. And besides, it really wouldn't change that much since there was no change to the tilt EQ. So you can use the old one if you really like that one. But for now, we'll have template Rochester and template LA Studio, which is going to have the change of the high frequency on the high and low shelf at 650 hertz. We're going to have a slight little tiny 445 hertz with a Q of 1.4, minus 1.5 dB pullback on those frequencies on the parametric EQ. And then we're going to use either the LA Studio Comp or the Rochester compressor for our end compressor. And make sure you set your threshold and your peak reduction appropriately to get the amount of gain reduction that you want, which is now we are able to visually see on our Helix, all right? What do you guys think? I hope you enjoy these. These will be up on CustomTone now as this video posts, so go grab them, and I hope they help you to be able to create presets faster and in a more efficient manner. I always like to have a good workflow so that things can get done quickly, right? That's always been my main goal, so. I hope that helps some folks. Grab those. Please like the video, share the video if you don't mind, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell notification to get it notified when I put new videos out if you haven't already. And I'll be back soon with some more content. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in, and ciao for now.